Welcome to another episode in the Law Rapport. I hope you learned something from today's episode. So let's get right into it. Welcome to episode 94 on the Law Rapport. Today, we're going to discuss how to obtain a driving license in the Turks and Caicos Islands. But before I do, my usual disclaimer, this is not legal advice. For legal advice, please contact an attorney of your choice. Welcome back. Recently, I was at the inspection depot at Road Safety and Old Airport Road. I went to inspect my vehicle to have my vehicle license renewed. And there was a lady there, and she could not understand any of the directives that was given to her by the road safety officer. The lady understanding of English was almost non-existent. She could not understand when he said to her to signal left or right, which is to turn the indicators on. She couldn't understand blowing the horn. She couldn't understand putting on the hazard. She couldn't understand putting the vehicle in reverse. And I said to myself, something has to be wrong. And the officer, quite understandably, was frustrated. And I said to myself, how could someone in the Turks and Caicos Islands have a valid driver's license? Because she did. But yet, they can't actually speak English sufficiently enough or understand it sufficiently enough. A few years back, I had a similar experience. My vehicle was parked just outside of my office, and I was in the corridor overlooking the parking lot, and the lady ran her car right into the back of my truck. And I went downstairs to talk to her and realized that her English was negligible. But I was able to ascertain from her that she had a driver's license and was able to inspect it, but she couldn't have any meaningful communication with me in English. And she then called her husband, and the husband came, and I asked him, how did she get a valid Turks and Caicos driver's license when she can't understand anything in English? And he said she applied for it at traffic. And I left it at that. Now, under the Motor Vehicles Driving License Ordinance, there are two routes for applying for the Turks and Caicos Islands driver's license. Recently, someone told me that there's a third route, but I have not seen it in the ordinance. They refer to it as under the table. I have not seen any reference in the ordinance to that procedure. But what I can say to you is that Section 4 of the Motor Vehicles Driving License Ordinance sets out at subsection A that a person who passes a driving test to the satisfaction of an examiner and who produces a certificate of his competence signed by the examiner, or who produces a valid driving license for vehicles of the class applied for, issued in the United States of America or in any part of the Commonwealth, or a valid international driving permit, subject to paying the requisite fee, will be granted a driving license to drive in the Turks and Caicos Islands. Now, Subsection A is rather straightforward, and that is for persons who have never held a driver's license before, whether in the Turks and Caicos Islands or another country. Then they will have to go through a driving test and pass to the satisfaction of the examiner. But for other persons, if they hold a valid United States driver's license or a license from any part of the Commonwealth or an international valid driving license, they will be eligible to be issued with a driving license in the Turks and Caicos Islands. The Commonwealth currently is a voluntary association of about 56 sovereign states, including Caribbean countries, African countries, and some Asian countries. Now, Section 5 of the Driving License Regulation sets out the following. An examiner shall not issue a certificate of competence unless he is satisfied with respect to the person undergoing a driving test that he can read English sufficiently to be able to read traffic signs and notices. However, there is no such reference to a person who is applying for a driving license who is the holder of an American driver's license or a driving license from any part of the Commonwealth or a valid international driving license. So, to answer the question that is at the forefront of my mind, it is highly possible that a person who understands little or no English or speaks little or no English to obtain a driver's license in the Turks and Caicos Islands. And I suspect that many persons applying for a driver's license in the Turks and Caicos Islands who are not ordinarily long-term residents of the Turks and Caicos Islands are actually presenting valid international driving license. Now, I remember a few years ago that there was a scandal with internationally issued driving permits, and where it was discovered that most of them were fraudulent. So it begs the question, what due diligence is being done in the Turks and Caicos Islands when someone presents a valid international driving permit or an international driving permit that purports to be valid? Now, as far as I can see, the process for applying for international driving license is rather uncomplicated and probably easy to manipulate. A person would just have to provide passport pictures and a photocopy of both sides of their current driver's license, and they could be issued immediately on the fly an international driver's permit. And that person, it appears, could be from any country obtaining such a permit. And then if they migrate to the Turks and Caicos Islands, whether to work or to live, they could present that international valid driving license. Now, this is, in my view, rather concerning, because while the ordinance places a positive obligation, in my view, under the regulations, that a person who is applying for a driver's license and who have to follow Route 1 in completing a driving test, that the examiner must ensure that that person can read English sufficiently to be able to read traffic signs and notices, etc. There is no such obligation placed on the Road Safety Department to determine if a person who is applying for Turks and Caicos Islands driving license through Route 2, and specifically if they present a purportedly valid international driving permit, there's no obligation to inquire or to investigate if they can read English sufficiently to be able to read the traffic signs and notices. And so, this could very well be the loophole that is exploited. I don't know for sure, but I do believe that this could be the loophole that is exploited in the Turks and Caicos Islands, why we see a lot of people driving in the Turks and Caicos Islands, and they do not sufficiently understand English. They do not sufficiently familiar with the road signs, and in general, the traffic directions. And this probably could be one of the causes of accidents in the Turks and Caicos Islands. There will have to be a more scientific analysis to determine if this is true. But wherever the truth lies, it is my view that this is being exploited in the Turks and Caicos Islands. And I believe that something needs to be done, because there need to be some verification that a person applying who presents an international valid driving permit is sufficiently proficient in English language for the purposes of the driving license ordinance. Here's where I will leave it for today. If you like anything that I say in this episode, give it a thumbs up. And if you disagree, it's your choice. Give it a thumbs down. Cheers. I'll see you very shortly in my next episode.